doing a quick sound check though. Why don't you tell my listeners what you had for breakfast this morning?
Oh my goodness, I did not eat enough this morning. I had a soy milk
Okay.
and a handful of cereal because I am kind of in overwhelm right now with my times. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What kind of cereal was it? Fruity Pebbles, or did you go?
No, it's actually some sort of cashew, some sort of, I am super granola. It was like some sort of organic cornflake
It's all
thing.
right. We eat a lot of that around here. Around here, one wins away. Awesome. Well, I think we're sounding good here. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about what you're raising money for over on Kickstarter right now?
Sure. Actually, I have two tarot decks that I've created over the last 11 months. They're not totally finished yet. So I'm in the process of creating two decks. And maybe I imagine your listeners may say, tarot, oh my goodness, like what is that? Or, there's often a lot of weird feelings that can come up when people
Sure.
hear that word. And so what I've done is I've sort of taken tarot and made it, I really want to share the positive aspect of it and the motivational aspect of it and the digging into your life aspect of it versus the sort of predictive fortune telling side of it.
Right.
So so I'm launching those two decks, sibling decks. And yeah, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'm somebody that I know very little about decks or tarot decks. What does that mean? Like put that out for a layman. Explain it to me here, and maybe other people will get it as well. Like, what does that mean?
So the world of tarot it's just, and I'm going to try and do it justice because it has so much history and there's so many different ideas around what it is. So I can definitely give you I'm going to give you my perspective.
Okay.
I want to kind of put that up before we start.
Right.
Tarot is sort of like a card set where there are 78 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And the 78 cards, they are set cards, kind of like in a regular deck. You'd have the four suits and you would have you'd have the Joker and you'd have the aces. Tarot's very much the same where there's a structure to it.
Okay.
And in that structure, there are so many different scholars and so many different years and years and years of learning and using these tools to understand more about a situation. So people will pull cards. They'd ask a question. You could ask. Some people use it as a predictive tool, where you may ask, what's going to happen. I tend to use it more as a what do I need to know about a specific situation or a specific problem that I'm coming up against. And you pull a card, and the cards are all based on these beautiful archetypes. So they're human archetypes. They're the archetypes of the human condition. The stories that we all know: falling in love, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, loss, happiness, joy, relationships. And so the archetypes are built around these very human elements. And they tell stories, if you will, in a way. You see the images. And so then when you pull a card and you see a card, you just you'll get an intuitive hit on what that image means for you in your situation. So I fully think that we can all do this. It's not that this is in the realm of the clairvoyance or the psychics. Right. Tarot is something, the more you use it, the better you get at it. And I actually come to the world of tarot from a super traditional background, conventional, I would say, more than a lot of tarot readers, where a lot of tarot creators, my first deck was an oracle deck for business. So those two worlds generally don't collide.
Yeah. And I wouldn't think so, but I'm intrigued. So that was your first deck that you said you made?
Yeah. So I did a Kickstarter 2 years ago, and that was successfully funded, and it was an oracle deck for business. Oracle's a little bit different than tarot in that oracle decks, they're very much the same, where it's like a card deck and you shuffle and you ask a question and you pull and you're kind of led to the right card.
Okay.
And then you interpret the card. So in that sense, they're very much the same, whereas the world of oracle is much more open. It's not this standard structure with the four suits and the major arcana and the minors. The creator can do as many cards as they want. It's very open, and they can make whatever meanings they want. So I started out there, and then 2 years later, I'm working on these projects that are very much, tarot's a bigger project to take on, because I could do a 40 card deck, and there's 78 cards in each deck, and sometimes people add extra, and there are meanings that are so nuanced and layered and understood by hundreds of thousands of people. So you want to make sure that you're doing their understanding of the cards justice while you layer on your own meaning.
So is it something that, are you creating every single aspect of these decks from scratch, or are you playing off of other things that have been created and putting your own like thought to it or your own idea behind it? What's that process like?
Oh, so there's definitely, they're not from scratch. I mean, it's been around. I'm not a historian, so I'm not exactly sure. I wish that I knew in this moment exactly when it was invented. I don't. Maybe I'll have to add that as a link or something. I'll give it to you. But it's a world that existed long before you and I were here. So
right.
We are. I mean, everything that I'm creating is based on traditional archetypes. Mm-hmm. So, in the movies, I'm sure that, it's often in the mysterious, mystical kind of, horror or sci-fi, or, in these sorts of,
right.
Tarot is always brought into pop culture in ways that sort of, it's very counterculture. It's often the bad guys.
No, I agree. I mean, that's it's, I don't know if it's wrong to say, but those are my stereotypes of like, all right, well, I want to do an interview on this. What's in my brain? And like the only things that go in my brain are stuff I've seen in movies, and or it's like the counterculture or hippies or whatever you want, whatever stereotype you want to put into it. It just kind of goes over this box. And I guess I've never been over there, so I'm like, I don't know we'll see what happens here on the interview. We'll go with it, but it's intriguing to me because on Kickstarter, I see these worlds growing, and I wonder if it's about, because there is a little bit of a story element, so that's why you're seeing board games doing so well. Mm-hmm. And I think people are also looking for more things to get involved in that unplug from the world, right? Unplug from their phone, their computer. Mm-hmm. And this seems like this is another element of that. And I'm wondering if that's why you're seeing this influx of tarot cards and decks and stuff like that on Kickstarter right now. So I don't know. That's where my head was.
There's a lot of, I would say there's tons of reasons. I think part of it is that people are, with the onset, it's like it's this new thing and it's not, with the popularity of things like Reiki and energy healing and mindfulness, and mindfulness kind of moving into the medical model. I think we see people searching for ways to understand themselves better.
Yeah.
And so that, you're right, for sure, in that it's that unplugging aspect. When you unplug, well, what do? You're looking for ways to connect with the world, with your relationships, with yourself.
Yep.
Right. So,
and do you think that that's also becoming, there's less stigma to it? And I mean, I'm noticing it it's open. Hey, I talk about therapy. We talk about this mindfulness. We talk about what we eat now, where I think if you really look back 10 years ago, a lot of that stuff was still hidden. And I don't know why. Like we're human beings. Why are we not talking about some of this stuff? So there's definitely, I feel like there's been a major switch in that too recently.
I would totally agree. We're more open, and it's amazing to see. I can tell you that I've been into tarot for a really long time, and like my 16-year-old self in high school had to keep it hidden for a really long time, because I did feel a certain sense of there was a lot of judgment and a lot of fear around it, and a lot of people they would put me in a box right away. I mean, I come from I have marketing and more strategic, conventional business background. And I couldn't talk about that stuff because people would automatically discount all of the good strategy, I would say. Right. So it was just like something that I kept totally hidden from the world, unless they were really in my like circle of trust.
Right. Yeah. So where, I mean, you mentioned that this is your second deck, but where was the sort of the idea though, or the sketch on the napkin? Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build my own. Where was that kind of origin story? Why jump into this?
Oh, well, you know what? It has to start with the first Kickstarter. It's not, for sure. I was doing a lot of brand strategy sessions with people and a lot of marketing one-on-one consultations, and trying to get people to move ahead in their business. Really, this is where it comes from. This was prior to 2015. And I noticed the same thing. After doing that for 10 years, I started to see that there were people that I could tell right away that they were going to do really well. because of their mindset, because of their attitude. And other people that I thought, okay, they need more help than me. Like, it doesn't matter. I could give them the best strategy in the world. Their mindset is not aligned. It's not where they need to be in order to get, they have to be comfortable with a certain amount of risk. So how do we get there? They have to, there's certain things that you just have to, I started to see patterns. And so with longer term clients, I began to pull oracle cards, because oracle cards are like soft tarot cards. They're like there's no death card, and there's no, they don't have those scary cards.
Sure.
Usually. So I started to pull oracle cards with clients who were comfortable with it, as a way to get them to say out loud what they needed to do. So it became almost like a weird sort of brand and design therapy.
Interesting. I am as intrigued as can possibly be, because everything you just said is what I deal with clients, where there's some people that have hired me, and I try not to stereotype them, but I can tell this is never going to work.
Yeah.
You do not have anything lined up outside of, no matter what I do. If I did the greatest strategy on the planet, I created the Got Milk campaign for you, you would still sabotage it and kill it right away. What do you want me to do? So that is a major headache here, where my wife could attest to this. She'll probably walk by in a second, but I struggle with that, where I'm like, I had one therapist tell me that I'm very centered in reading the rooms, or reading people's energies and vibes.
Yeah.
And I don't talk about it much, but I'm like, yeah, I can tell almost instantly with people whether it's going to work or not. And very rarely am I wrong, and it's not me being cocky or, any of that. It's just like, no, I can tell your energy, man, right away. It's just not going to work. And then there's some people I'm like, this is going to be gold. We're going to be best friends forever.
Exactly. So it sort of started out there. And I thought, I looked for years for a deck that I could use in those sessions that made sense for business, that wasn't quite as out there as woo-woo as, because I wanted to bring more people into that, because I saw that there was, just once they started using that tool, and we were able to identify the other things in their life that they needed to get in place before they could get this to take off.
Right.
I just saw so much positive change, and business is growing a lot quicker, and people taking, the good kind of risk, where they're going to get up in front of an audience and talk. It was mostly the kind of self-expression, do what you really want to do. Don't build the product that only because you think that's what they want. What is it that you really in your heart want to do, that you're going to be passionate about for 10 years? So it was all of those sorts of questions that we started to tackle and get clear on when we were pulling cards. It was almost like the cards give people permission to be honest. Yeah. Because it's not me. So there are people who are intuitive, and I'm not going to say that, there's no, everybody can work their intuition for sure. But in the sessions, I found that it's much more the person the reason it works is because, whatever I say, you're going to take it and interpret it in your minds, and it's going to connect to some memory that you have. You're doing the work on the connection. Mm-hmm. And so that was the thing. I could not find a deck that worked. So I thought, I'm going to create this deck. And I thought Kickstarter was the perfect solution for that, because number one, I didn't want to spend, it was, I think, 12,000 US I needed to put out in order to get my first, professionally done commercial printing overseas done. And I also wanted to know, am I the only crazy person that thinks this is a good idea?
Right. Yeah,
so it was great market research.
Yeah. Well, so I guess what goes into creating a deck? What's step one out of the gate? Is it artwork? Is it the copy, the narrative? What starts happening outside of after you make, hey, I'm going to build this. Now what?
With the first deck, it was definitely the imagery, and that was just more word-based. It was so the first one is a little different. With the next two, the two that are kickstarting right now, I can't even tell you how crazy the process has been. Nothing like my strategic mind would like it to be. I began the first deck sort of as an exploration, because the first deck that's kickstarting right now, there's one called the Light Seers and there's one called the Muse Tarot. Let's talk about them that way, because first, second, and third are going to get really confusing. The Light Seers is the one that I began to draw last July, because there was some, with any sort of success, visibility, you start to have people who absolutely love your project. And of course, there's other people that are like, oh, you know what? It's not, I don't like this about it.
Yeah.
So I actually began the Light Seers Tarot as a way to explore some of the different ideas that I was hearing. And it was like 1 out of 1,000 comments, right? This is like one of the things where we focus so much on that negative comment where, oh, it's so motivational was the thing. She's too happy. Her deck is too happy. It's too motivational. So I thought, okay, I'd like to explore a deck that really that has this beautiful shadow and light aspect to it. So I began to, what would a deck like that look like? Because I believe that there's both that shadow and light in everything, but from the perspective of, yeah, you can't see the stars without the dark kind of perspective, where you need it to do the deep dive. Am I making sense? Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I'm all about yin and yang. I think there's always a positive and a negative to every single thing we do. There's no matter what we do, I can probably flip it, and there's a cause and effect. Something else has happened because, I don't know. We're talking right now. There might be something that we don't know about that happens years from now. Who knows? I don't know.
Exactly. So it was this sort of look at what are some of the traditional archetypes. Let's bring them to 2018, where we don't think the same as people did in the Dark Ages, and a lot of these archetypes come out of those times. And so what do the archetypes look like for today? And there are other people who have tackled this. There are so many tarot decks out there. So I'm not the first person to look at this because it's such a traditional aspect of the tarot, but I wanted it to be a deck that really looked at light from the perspective of today's contemporary light worker, like somebody who is doing good in the world, healing, somebody who sees their art as healing, someone who sees their poetry as healing.
Right.
And so what would that sort of deck look like? So I'm so grateful for those comments that I read because they spurned on a whole new deck.
Sure. And
I was about 3 months into the project, and I had this crazy idea for a second deck. You're not supposed to do this as a creator, as an artist. I'm sure you have to start and finish stuff, or else you're just kind of like a bird looking at shiny things and never finishing anything. So I had this idea for a second deck. It came on it was like a wave that swept everything in my life out of the way. I haven't been this inspired that I can remember. And I pushed it off for about a month. Like, I can't do this. I'm working on this. I've started this and I'm invested in this. And it got to the point where I started to dream about it, and I started to have poetry, because I just all of this creative expression come up around this second deck. And so around December-ish, I said, okay, I'm going to start doing the images. And so this second deck kind of overtook everything and happened really, really quickly in the middle of the other creation.
Right.
I'm about 95% done that deck now. And then I went back to the other one and I thought, okay, I need to kickstart these, because here I am having almost 11 months of my life into this work.
Yeah.
And I haven't made any money back on it yet. It's time for me to, it's time to
let it go, see what happens. Right.
Yes.
That's
and
great.
that was scary. It was actually scarier to do it that way, because I felt like I already took a lot of risk by putting so much time into it up front.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the, I don't know about the struggle. Well, it might be one of those biggest struggles a lot of creators have is really putting that out there and putting that, that project in front of Kickstarters, the community, and getting that feedback, you don't know what's going to come back. People could have also not backed it. Right. And
sure.
Now you're like, oh, I thought it was going to go big. And that happens. There's a ton of failed campaigns, but you had to have had some sense though, that what you were working on is good. I mean, the artwork looks great. Everything looks amazing. The page is built out really well. So you had to have some sense that,
thank you.
The world's going to want this.
I have been since I started. I taught a course in something that's called Tarot Summer School. It's this lady, Ethany, in Vancouver, and she does this Tarot Summer School every year. And last summer, I taught a course on how to create your own Oracle and Tarot deck. Because of my design and branding background, I had all of the printing. understanding. And so I taught this course. And out of that course is sort of when I started reading those comments and I started creating this other deck.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been sharing my progress on Instagram. So I have been doing, as some cards come up, I'll put it on my Instagram feed. I've been putting it in my stories. And so as far as understanding that the community was ready and when the time, because timing is so important, because I've seen gorgeous, gorgeous decks that I will look at in awe and they don't get funded. And I'm like, it's so much better than I could ever create.
Right.
This needs to be funded, but that behind the scenes, they haven't done any list building or any marketing, or they haven't connected with the community. So I have spent a year sharing this kind of like, it's not that I've been teasing it. I've just been really open about my process.
Right.
And also asking people for advice. So for probably once every 2 weeks, I would put out a new card, mostly in stories, not necessarily in my feed. And just asking people, what do you prefer? Do you prefer this or that? Because whenever I would get stuck in my concepts for an idea, I put it out to the community. And so that back and forth and that feedback, it serves two things. It's amazing for understanding the market and understanding what they want. But of course, it also allows people to participate and become a part of this thing that the community builds together.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how to get to that level of vulnerability? Because what you're describing is what we try to tell every one of our clients. We try to say to them, just be open. And they come back, what if they steal my idea? And it's just like, it's not how
I give you the woo on this.
but I think it's so important that people are open about this process and letting their flaws show through. Like, we get stuck quite a bit in the perfect post scenario. Like, we have to make the perfect Facebook post today. And I tell people it's going to disappear. Nobody's going to see it unless I pay for it. And then it's going to disappear. Why are we spending 3 hours on a Facebook post today? But it's just like, and that's what I don't know. Especially if they're a little bit older and they've run other businesses, they're just stuck in the perfect thing. And it just doesn't exist in this world and everything you're talking about is what we try to tell people. Like, you get so much benefit out of sharing, and you might have went down paths you wouldn't have expected and all that sort of stuff. So how did you get to that point of vulnerability that you would be open to show an early version of something that might not be the finished product?
So I had a conventional business before. And when I knew I was ready to shift it, I opened up a Instagram that was not connected to anyone in my life. I think that was in 2013 when it kind of, when things were newer in Instagram, the communities were much smaller. And so I began to just explore. This was really a whole journey of self-expression for me, explore who I am, what I really want to do. And so not everyone is going to do that for a brand new product, for sure. I get that. But it was amazingly freeing to be able to show up as me and to say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I love. This is what I'm building, and not worry about what anyone else thought. And in that, it was probably 6 months before my husband was like, I'm connecting your name. And he just kind of made an oops post. I'm going to put oops in quotes because I know he tagged me, and then he was like, oops, I tagged you, but I probably had 3 months before he even knew, because it had to be me. I was so tired of that. I was just so tired of being so worried about what everyone else thought. And it's paralyzing. As a business owner, you are so thinking about the other person more. You lose your passion and your momentum in a project when you're so busy worried about all of that other stuff. So I decided I learned so much from that exercise that I decided, okay, I'm going to build my business this way. And so then it becomes an exercise in sharing. It's super lean. I know I'm sure that when you talk to people about, growing a business and with the lean mentality, it is so lean because you put it out and right away you get instant feedback. You can see how many likes, you can see how many hearts, you can see how many comments. Post is ignored. You're like, okay, what was different about that? So you learn. It's like light speed launching. Really.
Yeah.
This is something that, do I have this here with me? I do. We did, my whole business is sort of based on this, cards and using your intuition and your heart. And but in incorporating some of these ideas. So recently we did a course. I'm going to have to, I'll show you for the people who will see it on video, where we did these cards, and they're prompt cards. So they're specifically for what is a social media prompt that I can use today that's going to share something about me that maybe is going to open up my brand story, that's going to open up our back end, behind the scenes, it's going to open up all those things that actually really interest people.
Yeah, that's
Then
fascinating.
you're not being salesy.
Right. Wow, that's great.
So there's all sorts of, I say go with the techniques for this stuff for sure. I do want to, you said something really interesting about.
Well, that's all I do.
Really, no, but you said, gosh, no, I'm not going to lose it. You asked about not being afraid of people stealing.
Yeah.
And that for me is there is a mindset shift that you can do around that, where, and this is so woo-woo, but I feel so compelled to share it, because when you live your life, and we have these two ideas, one is an abundant mentality and one is a scarcity mentality, right? And those two things are totally opposed. And when you live your life in the abundance mentality, you're constantly seeing it, looking for it. And when you live your life in that scarcity mentality of they're going to steal it, then you're not going to share it, and you're not going to find the abundance. It's like it's like a self-fulfilled prophecy that you create when you live so much in scarcity that you're afraid to put things out.
Yep.
Yeah.
We call it shooting. We call it shooting people. We watch people just shoot themselves in the foot. It's like,
yes, exactly.
What are you doing? Like, so where'd you grow up?
So I'm in Canada. I'm just north of Toronto.
Okay.
And I am from a pretty, we're like half an hour north of the city.
Okay. All right. What'd your parents do growing up?
My mom was a teacher, and my dad was an auditor for the government.
So where does building decks and marketing and art and where does this start to kind of come together and form into who you are now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question. That's so cool. My mom is artistic. She retired to be an artist. So my mom was always amazing at allowing us to kind of do our thing. And I mean, we had like giant rolls of paper in the house when we were kids, and we would draw all over them. So my mom was always very good to help us grow that side of us, that skill set. They were also really good, and I am so thankful for this. They were amazing at letting, I say us, my brother and I, to choose our own path in life. I was a smart kid, and I'm sure that it was difficult for them when I didn't want to do medicine or law or, all of those sort of traditional things. Right. And I went into graphic design, but they were so supportive of those, of those choices. I took a year off to go snowboarding in Whistler. I mean, they were just awesome with that kind of, they always supported my dream. And I think that it sounds so cheesy, but it makes all the difference in the world as far as like believing that things are possible. Not that I didn't have my own set of issues and I had to push through all of that self-belief anyways, but they've definitely planted the seed.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. So what kind of do you do in a daily practice just to kind of keep yourself grounded, especially when you're running a Kickstarter campaign and the busyness of it? Are there any tips or techniques that you have just to stay, one, on top of all the communication that's probably happening right now, getting random emails from guys like me and responding? So how are you doing that? Are there, like I said, tips or techniques that you could tell people to focus on?
Gosh, so I do have I keep some time in the morning open no matter what. And so anything that has to be done, the have to be done, I tend to do them. And I have a small window for those. Those are like between 11 and 2. Because the rest of my day, and this is not just during Kickstarter, it's because the rest of the day, there's that, at the end of the day, there's always those things that you don't finish or that are unexpected. And the beginning of the day, my time in the morning is so sacred time. I have to sort of tune in. What am I doing today? Get my head on, get my list, make sure that it's kind of quiet. If I can fit it into the day, I'll meditate, even if it's 10 minutes, all those things just to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And because if not, you wake up, open your eyes, and you've got 1,000 emails, and it's like you can put yourself into panic mode and all that stress. And
right.
I mean, it's not that it doesn't happen. Definitely during a campaign, it is super fast, right? You think you've got 30 days or however long you make your campaign for, and you're on for those 30 days.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, I have no way of describing it to people when they're like, oh no, I'm prepared, I'm busy, or I got this. And it's just like, you have no idea.
No.
Like, you have no idea. And I don't know why, and I don't have any other way to describe it. I don't have anything that they can do to like prepare for it. I'm just like, just plan on being, you're going to be annoyed with me at some point when I tell you have to do this today. I have to do this today. Yep, got to do that.
Because
so it's a lot.
It's crazy, right? And nobody told me that the first time I went through it. And actually this time I did a lot more prep going into it. So I had some like emails built out, and so I was kind of more prepared. But I feel like there was this surge of success out of the gates, which was amazing. And I haven't actually, in the last 2 days, it's crazy, I haven't done any marketing or any outreach about it at all, because I had something happen with my shipping from my first Kickstarter project, and I have like 600 boxes that I need to deal with here today. So I'm like, okay, you know what? It's just I have a little bit of I'm in a little bit of overwhelm, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is what I asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so, way worse actually on the other side of not having any orders or backers or anything to do. It's worse on that side. Well, let's break down a little bit more on this Kickstarter. So right now, I mean, we're talking very early in your campaign. You still have 30 days to go. You had, I'm in US dollars, so you're just over 15K, and you're already just under $50,000 with 638 backers. So a lot of eyeballs and a lot of backers, which is awesome. What was kind of, obviously you've already done the first campaign, but for this campaign particularly, and you mentioned some of the pre-stuff that you're working on, what was sort of the strategy that you were putting together before you launched? Like was there any metrics you were looking at? What was just the general mindset of like that you were working on before you launched this campaign?
So I definitely knew that for the first, week when the campaign starts, I remember not having time to make a post to put it, to even put on Instagram. I remember being so busy that I didn't have my materials ready, and I thought, oh my God, I wish someone had told me. And so this time I have posts, like I've got posts ready to populate Instagram. I've got imagery that I can use for Facebook. So I've got some of the actual imagery and the campaign stuff ready. I have some emails ready. I've got my email list segmented now. So, and I didn't prior to this, where I know that these are the people who funded the last campaign, and these are the people that tend to open stuff. And so I've got that all sitting there waiting. I still have to do a little bit of tweaking on the emails. They're not totally done, but I still haven't sent this Kickstarter, hey, it's live information to my regular list. So I plan on doing that in the next few days.
Yeah.
And, so I did all of that kind of pre-stuff more than there. I can tell you already, I'm seeing where I could have done things a little bit better. Like I have had people already reach out to me and say, one of the decks is going to be with a digital guidebook. And my stretch goal was, we'll turn that digital guidebook into an app if we hit this number, and we hit it already. And which is great, because I'm really excited to create an app, but the people are already commenting and saying to me, hey, we don't want an app and we don't want a digital guidebook. We want a physical guidebook. And I know on this side of the screen that I did not leave enough space in my campaign for that particular stretch goal.
Sure. Right.
And so I left it for the ones that I was planning. And so I'm already seeing, I could have surveyed, or I could have figured that out prior.
Right. There's always something.
3 days in, I'm already being like, oh no, but I mean, that's great, right? This is how we learn. And that just means that there's opportunity in the future to do that as a secondary, if that's what people are asking for.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Was there any metrics you were looking for before you launched? Just like hard metrics, like, hey, we want to have 3,000 email signups particularly for this, or we want to.
Yes.
Facebook ads. I don't know. Was there any metrics you were looking at before you launched?
Yes, I was keeping a pre-launch list for people who would be interested in the deck specifically that wasn't connected to anything else that I do. And when I hit 1,000 people, I clicked play on the Kickstarter.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. What was some of your ways of gauging their interest, knowing that they would be excited about the campaign?
So it was really just, it was really just the back and forth on Instagram. Instagram is like my main platform that I use for any kind of promoting. And so it was the back and forth on Instagram. It was seeing the comments and the likes and the impressions go up on the cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to put the card images in between other images, like let's say every 5 or every 6. And as soon as I saw really the interest is on the cards and I saw that start to go up and spike, I knew that it was okay. The people are coming back, or they're following me for this.
Right.
So that was, and that's also, gosh, I hate to say this because it sounds like Trump, but it was a feeling. There was a feeling.
Sorry about that, everybody out there.
No, no, it was, there was a feeling, I'm Canadian, so I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm apologizing. It's, I don't know what's going on. We have nothing but shame as we, right? and like all my clients are basically international on the stuff, and I'm so sorry about everything.
Yeah.
we're a mess right now.
So there's a feeling, I was like, okay, the interest is here for sure. And there was also, what I also had put so much time and effort into it, that when I did my pricing on the Kickstarter, it wasn't like a profit. I'm going to make, it wasn't a profit model for my first, I really treated it like a Kickstarter. I had the option to do pre-orders. A lot of people in my industry will just take pre-orders. And then, they'll do all of the same marketing, but they'll just do pre-order sales. And I thought, I wanted to do the Kickstarter because you get some good metrics back from that.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And,
I think all the insiders, like they'll support everything. They'll champion you. It's almost like it's like the old school street teams.
Yes.
Like if you're trying to, move t-shirts at a concert, you got to get your street team ready to go. It's that, I think, for digital. That's why I always suggest everybody, if you've got a new product, find a way to do Kickstarter. It's just another animal, but the metrics are so good.
Yes. Yeah. You get so much information, you get the community support. And I am really, some people, notice it when a creator is doing it for all of the metrics and all of the good perks of Kickstarter. And they're so disengaged with their community, either right afterwards, or they're super, they're unengaged, even during, really. Mm-hmm. You see the difference, you feel the difference. And when you're buying from a creator who is really like, you're championing me, and I am loving you to death for doing it. And that in the moment when you're kickstarting is the moment when you have the opportunity. I'm going to speak pure marketing for a second, not even, all of the hard stuff aside. It's like you are building your people for life. Those are the people who are going to keep coming back to you because they're supporting you. They're preaching what you're selling. You're in a position where you can do the updates and the live updates. And it's just such an amazing way to build community that if you're into that as a creator, I can't imagine doing anything else. I love that. I love that aspect of the work.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir here. I get it, man. That's what we love here is we'll take like 200 people who are passionate over like 2,000 random emails. Like,
absolutely.
I want 200 people who are like sharing and actually commenting, because I was talking to somebody the other day about the holy grail I try to get to is where I'm getting comments on Facebook ads that are basically writing my next round of comments, right? Like they're commenting what I'm going to put in their next things. So like my audience is literally telling me what to advertise. How do you get better than that? Like,
it's perfect. It's such a beautiful, it's such a new, interesting way to launch. This is not, you have to, though, of course, you have to be a little bit open. You have to be vulnerable. You have to do all of those things that feel scary as a creator, right? It's like putting your work out there to be judged.
Right. Yeah. Oh, totally. And that's hard for a lot of people. That's really hard. So what happens, obviously you got the 30 days to go. It takes a few days for the money to drop from Kickstarter. But what happens, let's just say in 45 days, the money's in the bank account. What starts to happen? How do you get these decks into people's hands?
So for me, the decks are not completely done. So I will be spending the next 3 months for sure finishing the first deck. So the one that kind of showed up, that was faster, but the other one is much more, it's laborious. I mean, it's got the illustration piece. So it's art, it takes longer. And so the Kickstarter money allows me to finish it quicker, first of all, because I'll be able to say, I'm doing 3 months this full time. I don't need to take on any other work, right? Which is great. And then after that, there's a huge amount of the behind the scenes, getting the files ready, communicating with the printer, figuring out, all of the finishes and the box and the packaging. And there's those details. The packaging alone, it can be a big project that people tend to underestimate. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into that part of it. And then there are the best, I have to say, the best part of the whole process. And this is going to sound, I love, of course, when you see that you've reached your goal and when you finally get funded, and then there's that part when you get your money and you can actually start, I have to procure an app designer. And so I can start to do all of that stuff. But there is this amazing moment when if you're getting it manufactured, if you're not actually doing it in your office with your own hands, there's this amazing feeling when you send it off to get manufactured, and that it's going to be, for me, it's 40 days.
Right.
So I just wait, and it's like I have 40 days to just sort of. That's when I bask. It's like it's done, and now it's so exciting, and you just have 40 days to just build your own excitement for it being in your hands.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
really awesome. So that's kind of what happens. And so that's the plan. And I'm so looking forward to those 40 days.
Well, they're around the corner here in a while. So what kind of looks like, what is your 5-year plan with this? Is it building a bunch of different decks? Is it different series? You have different ideas down the road? Is it, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years or so?
This is such a funny question because like I said, I come from this traditional agency kind of business, and I always knew what the plan was. And ever since I shook it up and did my first Kickstarter, I've never really known, I can see this sort of bigger group of products. I would love to, and I think that I'll get there with this Kickstarter, to have the time to just spend some time writing, to spend some time creating some workbooks. I have some online courses that I've done in the last couple of years. And so the combination of the digital products, the live teaching and the pre-recorded teaching has been great, but it hasn't given me enough to not pause from constant production. Yeah. And so what I see is, I kind of looked at all my numbers and I thought, okay, if I have my deck and that's got consistent sales, which is great, my first one. If I had that times 2 or 3, then I would be I would be wonderfully set to be able to take some time out, write the book that I've always wanted to write, create just so that's not really a plan, is it? That's just sort of a work plan or a work dream.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, no matter what, you never know. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but you got to at least have some rudders maybe on it, just a little bit, bouncing it back and forth. But that's great. It's really awesome. So where can people find out more information? Outside of the Kickstarter, how can people dive into your world, see what you're working on, and kind of digest what you got going on?
So I have a website. It's Chris-Anne.com. That's Chris, just the way a guy would spell it, -ANNE.com. However, the best place to connect with me or to find me and to see what's actually going on in my world is Instagram, for sure. And my Instagram handle, gosh, I wish I could change it. I've been trying to get my name for ever. It's Pixie Curio. It's PIXIE CURIO.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
period.
Chris-Anne, I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know it's busy, and this was a great conversation. And I wish you nothing but success and continue good luck in the next 30 days here. You might have a big campaign on your hands here. This is
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Jeff. Honestly, I'm honored that you reached out to me, and just thrilled that you did. And thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.